Hey everyone, how are you doing? I'm here from my little home studio get-up because of the lockdown and I'm also moving house. So I haven't got access to my studio that I'm normally in, but that'll change soon. But anyway, I thought it would be cool to do a sort of production walkthrough of the song that I wrote for the aggressive rock One Hit Wonder release. And by production, I don't mean things like mixing and engineering, I mean song production. So how I wrote it, why I did things the way I did, and sort of walking through some of the synth design I did, and just sort of the process behind the choices I made. So, as you can see on the screen, I've got my session. This isn't the final mixed version because I actually sent it off to Nolly to mix, because why wouldn't you if you could do that? So it doesn't sound as good as the one on the video, but it still sounds good enough for this. Already heard this song? If you haven't, just go on our YouTube channel or on our Instagram TV and you'll be able to find it. But the song is kind of split up into, I guess, 4 sections. We've got the intro, which is this, then sort of, I guess you could call it a verse, and then a big old chorus, and then like the end riff breakdown, I guess. So let's just focus on the first section. This section was very much inspired by a band called Code Orange, which you've probably heard of, and I'm like, a couple people said it in the comment, and you're dead on right, that's where the inspiration came from. So I'll just play the section through and then we can talk about it. Okay, so as you can hear, it's like a palm muted driven riff. I actually took a tip from Misha in one of his videos he did, where he said he likes to sort of kick off the song with a drum fill from later in the song, and he just cuts it and puts it at the beginning. And this is exactly what I did for this. I ended up changing the fill later in the song, so this fill actually isn't in the rest of the song anywhere, but it worked perfectly as an introduction, I thought. There's nothing crazy going on with the guitars and the bass. Actually, that's not totally true. There is some weird stuff going on. But the main riff is pretty simple. The weird bits are this section and this section for sure. The thing that's quite popular currently is like using a whammy pedal on guitar. I don't have a whammy, so I just recreated it by just using the high strings and sliding. I kind of like it this way. I've done it before and I think it's really effective. It's kind of a little bit gnarlier than using a whammy, which is obviously like a polished and contained sound. This is a little bit crazier because you've got like, maybe like as I'm sliding, my fingers aren't totally synced up because I'm not a great guitarist, but that kind of adds to the whole vibe of the song, I think. Through the song, when I solo stuff, you'll hear that like the guitar takes are really not very clean. Normally that's something I kind of try and clean up, but for this I really didn't care because it's not like a precise clean song, it's a messy song. So I found when sort of going through and cleaning things up, it added to the vibe instead of distracting my ears. So I just kept that stuff in. For here we've got some harmonics that I did and then just cut up the end and then matched it with the snare fill. You can see in the MIDI here it's just kick and ride and then a nice snare fill out. A little bit crazy, that's something Code Orange do a lot, is like adding syncopated or abrupt sort of weird cuts and stuff into their songs, so that was the idea behind that. Right, so for the synths in this section, this is kind of like, I'd forgive you for thinking it was some kind of like a vocalist screaming. It's not, it's just a really gnarly synth patch. This is the synth I used. Diva by, is it Yuhi? UHE? One of the two. This synth is the sickest. It's like so good at emulating famous analog synths. It sounds so good. It is quite CPU intensive, so if that's something you've got to be wary of. But this was the synth patch I found. What I like about it also is that it changes each time. It's not like a sample or something. It was just really sick to like really emphasize the beginning of the riff, and then through each 2-bar count. I then emphasize the harmonic section by doing that on here. And then lead it out with it as well, just into the next section as kind of like another transition effect. And then here we've just got a big old boom from Omnisphere. Which one is that? Collision of Concepts, that patches. I like booms which have some kind of weird textures in them. Obviously bass drops work really well in some contexts, but because this was a bit messy, I wanted something with some texture. And that patch I thought worked really well. On to the next section. This one's more involved. It kind of progresses in synth layers throughout. But for this section, I'll just play you a quick snippet. Okay, so the one thing people picked up most in this section was the bass tone. And I think quite a few people thought there wasn't extra synths layering the bass tone, because the bass tone by itself is just this. There's some good examples of what I mean by being pretty messy in terms of guitar and bass takes. Like there's a lot of noise in there, some string buzz and stuff, but I just kept it in because I like the vibe. I layered that with Diva again. This is the Diva patch by itself. I just loved it. It's very, this section was, it's funny, each section is kind of inspired by a different band. This section was kind of inspired by Northlane. I was kind of taking their sort of new metal, like cyberpunky vibe that they have on their latest album, which is a sick album, by the way. That's the kind of vibe I was going for here. So yeah, when I layered those two, I thought it just sounded awesome and quite unique. And I thought it just fit this song really well, and they blend so great together. So you can hear I've got it pretty loud there, but they just blend great. On the guitars here, these were very messy, but I really liked it. I've got kind of like a reggae delay on them. I just love the sound of this delay so much. So for that I'm using Soundtoys Echo Boy. And yeah, the style is Memory Man, and I just found that it works really well. What else did I do to it? I put a bunch of saturation on it, which gives it that kind of reggae sound, which I thought was sick for this. And I've got it on both guitar channels. But then I do some other stuff on the right channel. I was actually, I think this sort of bit here, I was just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do on the guitar and just recorded it, thinking I would listen back and think, oh yeah, that works well, and then go back and track it again. But I was just improvising and it worked. So as a result of that, there's a bunch of noise in this and like just crap. But again, it all fitted into the vibe of the song, so I left it. So on that I've got a chorus as well. But yeah, like, it's really messy. I don't know what this was. I think I was trying to find out which note I was going for. But in the context, when I listened to back, I thought it was really cool, so I left it. And then I've just got like a high tremolo guitar going on here with echo bar as well. Just a pedal on that note. Again, there's a mistake there, but I kept it in. And then we've got that scream synth again, just leading into the next section. It's a good idea to like reuse effects and sounds from throughout a composition. I think it sort of makes the whole thing feel cohesive. Like I could have, I don't know, found a riser or something, but I thought, no, let's just bring back that scream synth and try and tie the whole piece together. And then we've got this section where everything comes in. I added some rhythm guitars, another synth bass, and some percussion. So let's go through that. The guitars are just copying the bass riff. Listening to a solo there, it reminds me of Tesseract, but then with everything else in, it's got that sort of cyberpunky feel. I knew I wanted the next section to be like a big open chorus, kind of like Carnival, so I put in some of those sort of delayed chords that you hear Carnival doing in this section to kind of lead into the chorus, which is next. And then bringing that pedal note up towards the end to create a sense of suspense and to lead into the next section. So the synth here, I created a serum patch. Another sort of hyper-driven synth, but where the filter here, the cutoff of the filter, opens up towards the end. So yeah, I'm running that off LFO 1, and I've got it a quarter note, so that's because that's the length of each of these, like so I wanted that LFO to last a quarter note, so the cutoff ramps up towards the end of each note, and that sounds like this. And that kind of just adds another layer of intensity and suspense, I guess. With that LFO rising towards the end, it makes you kind of feel like you're lurching forward each time, which I really liked. And that was kind of why I decided to bend each of the notes on the guitar, which you can hear here. Again, bunch of string noise, left it in. Looking at the name of this track, which reminded me, I actually stole something I saw Misha do on one of the videos I edited for him. And I just put an octave pedal on this guitar at like a 50-50 blend with an octave down. And it just creates this sort of down-tuned effect on the guitar, which is really cool for differentiating sections. The guitar was tuned to drop C, so like the octave below would be like double drop C. But then you keep that higher octave in as well, just to retain some of that vibe at that level. I also recorded this on position 2 on the guitar, so it was more twangy. Then we got a little, oh yeah, the percussion. So these are some orchestral drums on a contact library I have. And something Gojira used every so often, there's like sort of bone xylophone drum things, and I was trying to recreate something like that with this rhythm. I think it just created a really cool sort of this effect where there are sort of rhythms crossing over each other, and it just kind of sounds like a whole wall of different information hitting your ears, and I kind of love that effect. So I've got here SPL Transient Designer, and I was just boosting the attack. So I'll A/B that for you so you can hear the difference. If I solo it. It's pretty subtle, but in the mix it was needed. And then, so that's that section dealt with. And then it's this next section which acts as a bridge. I introduced 2 new synth layers which I haven't used before and keep that bone drum sort of effect going throughout to lead into the next section. We've got a reverse snare here as a little ramp. So I'll just play this section quick. So if we just solo this section and take a look into it. This little guitar, I was kind of unsure if it was really needed or not, but I liked it. And it leads into the sort of vibe of the next section, which is very much sort of carnival inspired. Big open chorus with sort of leading notes and delays and all sorts. I just wanted it to be really big and epic. So this guitar soloed here. You can probably hear what I mean by that. Reminds me of carnival, sounds sick. We've got the bones doing the same thing. We'll go to this one, Cheap Carpet, another diva patch. And you can see this modulation information here, which I think was just done with the mod wheel. It's just opening up the cutoff on the synth, which is another way to bring movement into a section, is to automate synth effects. So you can, things like alter the LFO rate, the cutoff, all sorts, the detuning if you're using like a multi-voice detuner or anything really. But that was just another way to lead into the next section. It's kind of like a Blade Runner synth, which, I mean, I bloody love Blade Runner. So anytime I can use something which reminds me of that, I will do it. But that leads into this next section, which is the big open chorus. Really simple chord structure. I thought about, I tried to make a much more complex chord sequence work, but with everything in, it just kept sounding cluttered, and I was like, oh, is the guitar out of tune? Something's off. But it was just that the chords were unnecessarily complex. I loved the sequence when I was just jamming on the guitar, but when everything was in, it was just like, I just needed to put my sort of, I needed to put my pride behind me and just do a really simple chord structure, and it was so effective. And that's just second position on the guitar and literally a note and then the octave above it. Nothing in the middle. Then, yeah, we've got this Frost piano, which is again another Diva patch. I think I wrote this just after buying Diva, so I was Diva mad. But with a lack of vocals, I like to use synths to try and bring across a melody that you can latch onto. And in this, I wanted like a kind of recurring note to really bring in that, because it's very, up until now it was kind of quick and heavy, and I really wanted this to sort of open up and feel like you're taking a breath of air. So I wanted everything to be nice and open. Because the space between each note is constant, it just gives it a nice driving pace to feel like you're walking forward. Sounds pretty gnarly by itself because I put, I believe, a bunch of decapitator on it. Yeah, that's without it, so you can hear how much, I mean, I maxed out the drive. And then use this knob to put some brightener on it. But I felt in the context of everything else, it doesn't sound that crazy distorted, and it helped just make it in the forefront. Yeah, like in the mix, it actually sounds pretty pure. Again, that's something Misha mentioned, I don't know, like a year ago in one of his videos, that he actually puts a little bit of drive on most of his clean tones because it helps just bring it forward, gives it some more beef, and makes it take up the space it needs to in the mix, so when everything's together it doesn't sound weak and distant. So that worked really effectively here for me. I'm pretty sure for this pad sequence with the Blade Runner synth, I was just messing around again, and like you can see I definitely quantized it, but the note lengths aren't all perfect and stuff. That one's off. But in the context of everything, it was kind of this like nice gliding synth that kind of was just going up and down. And I like the way it contributed to the feeling of the chorus. So that's soloed. So it's made up of the same notes as the Frost piano, but just played in a different sequence. This was kind of, the reason I kind of just wanted to play it in and see what happened was actually one of my friends called Abraham Fahima, who's a really talented producer in the UK and songwriter. He's an amazing songwriter. He said that like when doing these kind of layers, he likes to just almost record from the start of the song to the end of the song and just get you to improvise. And not necessarily have things perfectly thought out and repeat at the 8-bar sequences or the 16-bar sequences. And it kind of gives this like organicity, is that a word? This organic feel to some of the layers. And it just makes it feel more alive. It kind of like it's got its own life, and I just love the way that worked here. If I was to program this out with a mouse, I don't think I would have chosen that note sequence. I probably would have chosen something that more closely reflected the Frost piano layer. But in the essence of the song and it being kind of like a bit rough around the edges, I thought that just worked perfectly. So that's something I really encourage you to explore. I think this section again is bringing it back in that tremolo. So then this is the second repetition of the chorus. Being the second repetition, I wanted to bring in something new to keep the ears excited. And this was just another octave layer on a guitar, not an octave pedal, but a note and then the octave above it. And it's just kind of this like, again, it's quite a floaty melody, floaty sort of rhythm and note choice. But I just loved the effect it brought. So that's soloed. So when I wrote that, I did like it, but I thought whether the guitar, just to sort of differentiate it from the other guitars, could try an octave up. I did try that, but then I thought it sounded weird, so what I opted for was actually to put it the octave down into the original octave and layer it with a synth to give some extra range to it. And that's where I use this Space Ocarina, another diva patch. Super cool and sort of sci-fi-y. It's got like a tape delay or some kind of reverb which is modulating, which kind of messes with the pitch a bit, which is an effect I love. It gives it a kind of weird dissonance, which I think can work really well in certain situations. And then I've doubled that with Soundtoys Pan Man, which is just like a stereo shifter basically, and it's just modulating left to right, as you can see here. That basically represents where in the stereo field the sound is. And then those two together, I thought blended really well, and just this octave helped give it the presence in the arrangement that it needed. Without it, in context, it's probably more obvious. quite subtle, but I thought I loved it. Right, being a playthrough, I knew that at the end of the chorus I needed to start wrapping things up in the interest of not being too long. So I thought, why not just throw it into one nice big heavy breakdown. So I let the chords ring out with the tremolo, and at the end of the tremolo in this section I knew it was going to be a build, so I wanted to bend it up just to create some tension, which is something I do a lot, and it works great. I don't bend it here, I just go up the note, which still works great. Bone drums come back in. This is where we kind of can join all the elements together. We've got another sort of weird Code Orange breakdown. We're bringing back in the bone drums, we're bringing back in the scream synth. We've got another big bass drop, we're bringing in the snare ramp, and what is this? This is a new synth we have. That's a weird one. Omnisphere coming to the rescue. Shock is the patch. So this section felt, when I wrote it, it felt so right, but in a really messed up way. And there's quite a bit going on here, which gives it this kind of sensation like it's tripping up over itself, which I just thought was really sick. And that's to do with what we were just talking about with the polymeter. But yeah, this snare drum I thought was so impactful, I wanted to emphasize that. So I cut these off when the snare hits and put up a snare ramp behind it, which is just printing a snare hit with loads of reverb and then reversing the audio sample. A great way to create suspense. And then this breakdown, let's listen to it. So there's quite a lot going on in this section, and a couple of subtle things I did. One was I added this modulating synth layer, which is that Omnisphere patch, to the scream. But I carried it on a bit longer. And it just gave this weird like modulation to the whole thing, which I loved. Really cool effect, I think. We got another bass drop, obviously. And then this piano continues through the entirety of the chorus, through this pre-breakdown bit, and then into it, but the notes slightly shift to create a bit more of an evil note sequence. You hear I drop that last note just to give it a bit more of an evil feel. We've got the delays, the tremolo going through. You can see I've just copied and pasted that from this section, but cut it in half because I didn't want some of the notes to repeat. And so this whole section is a polymeter. It's in 6/4, but it sounds like it's in 4/4. So that's a really cool effect that I loved. And this dun 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 dun. The reason that feels weird is because it's like, I know on this grid it says it's in semiquavers, but because it's a polymeter, it feels like it's in triplets. It feels like it's 16th note triplets. And I just did the first, second, fourth, and fifth of that 6-note triplet sequence. So it's dun 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 dun. And it just gives this kind of like tripping feel, which I thought just sounded really cool. And then to make that tripping feel more exaggerated, I didn't put it on that one, so it's dun 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 dun. And I brought the groups of two one of the repetition earlier. So there's just little things you can do to manipulate the rhythm to throw the listener off guard and create a really cool effect. So there's just kind of the thought process that I was going through when I added in what I did. I really enjoy sound design, synth design, and messing with weird instruments and layers and seeing how they can be used together to create really cool effects, which is what I did a lot of on this one. That combined with careful note choice and intent behind why you do what you do, you can create a really cool and unique sounding composition, which I think this is. I hope you do too. Anyways, thank you for watching, guys. I'll probably do more of these in the future, so keep an eye out on our socials and YouTube page. We love you so much, and thanks for watching.